This is Ambition Today.
These are the entrepreneurs, creators, investors, and builders who ambitiously change to the world. Explore the hardships and heroisms of everyday life while we reveal the key moments to leave behind a lasting legacy. This is Ambition Today with Kevin Siskar.
What's up, world? I am Kevin Siskar, and you are listening to Ambition Today. You can now text me at 646-907-6669. I'm building a small community via text message using Community. It's a new app, and I'm going to be sharing exclusive clips from the podcast, interesting startups I meet, and more. It's free to join, and you can join by just texting literally anything to 646-907-6669 to join now. But today, we're joined by the one and only, the amazing Jack Greco. He is the founder of OneLink Ventures and co-founder of ACV Auctions. OneLink is a full-stack digital agency specialized in software, web, and mobile app development, while ACV Auctions is a full-service, coast-to-coast wholesale automotive auction platform. ACV is one of the first unicorn startups in Buffalo, New York. And Jack, welcome to Ambition Today.
Thank you for having me. I mean, when you give me an intro like that, I should, I feel important. So thanks. But no,
you're welcome.
Kevin.
So you're in Buffalo today. I know we're not together because of COVID,
Yep.
but where are you?
I am in downtown Buffalo today, sitting over on the corner of North Street in Delaware at a place that I got a meeting immediately after this. So
all right.
Yeah, it's no rest for the weary, I guess. So.
Nice. Well, first off, congrats on ACV Auctions. It's a unicorn startup, a $1.5 billion valuation. We're going to get to ACV in a little bit, but let's take it back to the start right now. Where are you from?
So I was born in Highland Hospital in Rochester. I don't know how far back you wanted, but no, I grew up.
Take it all the way back.
Yeah, so I grew up in Canandaigua. We moved out there when I started grade school, which is about an hour and a half east of here in Buffalo, in the Finger Lakes. Beautiful place. I did not live on the lake, but I did get to swim in it a lot, so it was a great place growing up. Son of a father who was an antique dealer and a stay-at-home mom that was a saint. So kind of was always around business, right? My dad had me working in the store when I was, probably child labor laws would have been enacted. But it just kind of got me to always feel like there wasn't a bright line between, what you did at home and what you did at work, because when you're in these family businesses, they're all kind of mixed up, right?
I have to say that's one of the number one trends. I've done 60-some episodes of this podcast, and pretty much everyone has some sort of link to a parent, a grandmother, an uncle, someone who had that entrepreneurial, tendencies and kind of instilled it in them subconsciously almost. So that's not too surprising to hear.
It's funny. Earlier today, this morning, I had a coffee meeting with a couple guys, and you'll hear in this. I get my fingers into a lot of stuff, and this is a biotech company that has developed a novel material as a contrast agent for MRIs. So if you ever got an MRI, they give you this garbage called gadolinium, just way too far down the periodic table and the wrong kind of heavy metal to have in your body. And so I'm talking to the chief medical officer, and we're doing this just for equity, right? I do a lot of things just for equity. And his name is Charles, and he goes, hey, he goes, this is a good opportunity. He's like, can my daughter's boyfriend, who his startup just failed, can he get involved? And it's like, yes, like absolutely. Like those are the opportunities you want, because whether this company makes it or not, right? I mean, it's always a crapshoot, It's a crapshoot whether or not ACV was going to make it or not. Like, I can tell you none of us are rocket scientists. But he was just like, I just want him to be around it. And so you see that there's an appreciation for this. I mean, the gentleman happens to be a first-generation immigrant himself, and I think that there's a lot of this cultural, like, I want the people around me to be working, like, to be able to be experiencing and soaking this up. So That's cool that you see that. It really is.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you grew up around entrepreneurial experiences.
Yep.
Did you go to college? What did you study? Did you drop out? What's the next phase look like here?
Yeah. So I ended up going to U of R. Somehow I think they got my resume confused with somebody else because I went on a full ride. And when I was there, what was funny is my father ended up in the hospital for about a year and a half, in and out of the hospital. And so that business he had built had gotten up to about 15 people, and I actually had to run it while I was in school. I originally was going to be doctor, an engineer. I don't know. I went through the gamut of all those important sounding jobs. And it ended up I couldn't do them because there's no way to do the labs and run a business at the same time. So I settled on economics, which I kind of was always in my blood anyways. And then remember I was taking an internship, and it was a horrible internship. It was with the e-learning company. But at that point I said my father had taken the business back over. I said, I want to get away from this, right? Doesn't matter. We share the same name and it's on the building. I want to experience something new. I hated the internship. I remember the morning I got fired, and, spoiler alert, I've been fired from every single job I've ever had, including ACV once, but I got to go back. The morning that I got fired, a bum stole my bike, and I had to ride he left his, and I had to ride the bum's bike into work. And the guy was giving me lip, and I'm like, here I am, I'm 21, I've done nothing in this world, right? He's giving me this crap, and he's on vacation. I remember his name was Roy. I go, Roy. I go, you're yelling at me. You're on vacation. He's like, I need you to do this and this and this. And I go, no, you don't. I'm out of here. I remember hanging up. I had to ride that damn bum's bike back home, another 8.5 miles. And I said, all right, I'm going to go to grad school. I picked up a GMAT book on the way home. Took the GMATs 2 days later. Continued on at U of R at Simon. Got my MBA there. Learned about what venture capital was from a little guy, a little short Cuban guy, Jose Coronas. He spoke in one of my classes. I told them I wanted to work for them. They said they didn't have any openings. I graduated and proceeded to show up there every single day for 6 months until they hired me. At some point, I think they started paying me because he goes, we had somebody stop in here. If we don't pay you, we could get in trouble. And I was like, all right, well. And so they politely paid me $250 a week. It's a 1099 to work about 50 hours there. I was like, I made more money on the farm. I grew up working on a dairy farm.
Yeah.
But so anyways, that's kind of like my backstory. That's what got me into venture capital. And then I did that for a while, did it independently for a while. And then, finally stopped half-assing a bunch of things and whole-assed one thing when we started ACV in 2014.
So that's a great segue right there, because I've found myself guilty of this before, right? Just doing too many things, whether that's in your personal life or too many things in your professional life. Yep. So leading into ACV, what was that journey like? Right before joining ACV. What lessons? Can you unpack that lesson a little bit?
Yeah. So ACV was and still is a cool opportunity in Buffalo, right? It was born from, there were two other co-founders, Dan and Joe. Joe I didn't know from Adam originally. He had just moved back here because his wife was from here. And Dan, I had known because we were two young guys like bouncing around this nascent startup space in upstate New York. I was living in Rochester at the time, and he was in Buffalo. And we understood each other, had complementary skill sets, and we both sat in a catbird seat. Like, we would see a lot of things. And so, we were just buddies, and we always said if one of us did something, maybe we'd do it together. So, and actually, ACV, in my eyes, didn't start because of all that. Dan and Joe had been working on it for a little while, and it kind of just wasn't totally coming together. And I don't think my introduction is what ultimately solved it. I think just patience and time did. But as they were working on it, I had gone on my grandmother's from Depew, which, right outside Buffalo. And I was coming up here a couple days a week, as I had done for the previous, since 2009. This is in 2014. The previous 5 years since my grandfather and one of my grandmother's daughters had passed away. And coming up here and checking on her, and I would spend the night, and she made me a big, delicious dinner. Anyways, through that, I met somebody that ultimately introduced me on a blind date with a young woman that I fell for. At the same time, I was learning about ACV. And what caused me to pull the trigger on ACV wasn't that it was this amazing concept that was going to end up being a unicorn someday. It was the fact this girl I had been dating for 5 months, and I found out we were going to have a baby, and I had to get my ass moved to Buffalo. So I said, okay. I remember it was like the same week. I was like, all right, we're having a baby. Awesome. Turn to the guys at ACV. I go, I'm in. Right. And we now it went from a duo to a trio. And, I really brought a lot of I typically am like a CFO or COO, a finance and operations type background. Though you meet me at a bar and you probably think I'm a sales guy, the way I talk and how fast it comes out. But so between the three of us, we kind of came together and said, we're going to do this. We sat down, we got serious, we raised some money, we brought in our first couple teammates. God bless them. I wish they had 10 times the ownership of the company they do now for the shit that they went through with us. And we took this idea, Joe's idea, and we turned it into a business. And that's when I realized, like, the idea is not worth anything. The execution is worth everything, right? And that was one of the real virtues I started to live by, because before that, a lot of what I was doing was in biotech and material science. So, like, the idea was everything. It was the patent. I mean, it was the business was built on that. And this was a little bit more like what I was used to. My dad was an antique dealer. Why was he able to buy an antique at a better price or have a store that people wanted to buy from? It was personality and execution, right? And honestly, I think ACV really got going because we had the right personalities, and we were going to stay with it till it ended. I mean, I had to. At that point, I was going to be a dad, and shit got real. So.
Yeah. I remember actually talking to Dan in the back of the Buffalo News, and he was like still running Z80 Labs, and he was anxiously telling me, I'm thinking, I haven't done it yet, but I'm thinking about quitting my job to work full time on this thing. Yeah. And it's turned out to be the right choice. So that's awesome. Yep. So what, talking about that turning point, right? Like, what has the journey been like? So obviously, you guys have hundreds of employees now. But I think what's relevant for probably more of our audience of founders and entrepreneurs is, talking kind of just about what you were just talking about is that turning point, right? You're building this product, you're hacking it together, talk a little bit more about what you called the time and patience aspect of bringing this to where it needed to be to maybe get product market fit or what that journey looked like.
So we had a unique journey in that the product is almost the exact same thing it was when we launched the company, right?
And also for those listening, what is the product?
Sure. So for those listening, unless you're in New York City, which there's probably not too many people in Manhattan right now, but you probably own a car. And at some point, we like to say every car is a used car, which it is. So, that car at some point got to whoever you bought it from, or will go to whoever you're going to buy it from, right? So there's not a lot of C2C that happens. I mean, the car I drive, I actually found on, for sale sign on the side of the road, but that's not the way it typically is now. A lot of times cars get traded in. When they get traded in to a dealer, the dealer a lot of times doesn't want them. About half the time wants to get rid of them. Let's just use that anecdotally. So when they want to get rid of it, they want to sell to other dealers, and that's called wholesale. That was always done physically. There were these big physical auctions that just looked like these double-sided garage door, lanes, and there would be a bunch of them, Odessa, Mannheim, and these cars would go there on a particular day that we can sell. And we said, this is stupid. This is stupid. One day a week, you get a chance to sell a car. Everybody's got to go somewhere. There's an opportunity cost to get there. There's no inspections on them. Why hasn't technology touched this industry in the last 70 years? And, it was really Joe's idea. He was like, I want to put this on an app. That was the idea. And so we put it on an app. We built an app that replicated some of the things that were thought to be requirements of having to show up on your own, like doing an inspection on a vehicle yourself and stuff like that. And so now dealers, it's dealer to dealer. It's a big space, 20 million cars a year, kind of 17 to 20 million people say are in this wholesale space that trade hands. And now we've given a way to do it, digitally. So, our high watermark month, that's been publicly stated has been about 45,000 cars. So think like 500,000 a year. So, that gives you an idea how big, like we think we're a big company. I think it's 1,200-1,300 employees now, maybe a couple more. It's a big thing, and we are one of the pioneers in doing it purely digital. And we've instigated.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead, please.
And what was that shift like when you kind of made that shift from product to sales and getting that early traction?
So, we did not have a ramp up beta period. We talked to a bunch of people, and it was June 1st, 2015. It was a 2004 Mazda Tribute that we ran, was our first car, and we sold it. $2,400. I don't think we made any money on it, but it transacted, right? There was not like this, hey, we got to tweak it. Hey, we have to play with it. It was like, okay, this dog hunts. Now let's let it out. And that first month, we transacted 53 cars. Next month came along, and we transacted about 100 cars. So June, July, August, the month my son was born, We transacted about 150 cars. September, almost 200. We're like, okay. I mean, you can imagine the model's just like, ving, we're all going to be millionaires overnight. Well, it didn't end up happening, but, we consistently grew, and then we felt the cyclicality of the seasonality of the cycle. And, we went through some bumps and bruises. We won $1 million at 43 North. Joe had his first kid 2 months after me in October. Now we all got kids at home because Dan had a kid already, Ada. We tried to make a go of it. After about 6 months after that, we were at each other's throats. Joe asked me to leave the business. I happily obliged. Board freaked out. We ended up, that's when George came on as our CEO. George called me up. He goes, "Hey, would you come back?" And I go, "Oof, I don't know if the missus is going to like that." But he ended up getting me to come back. And then, I came back and I stuck around for almost another 3 years after that.
Yeah.
And the company just grew. I mean, there were a lot of bumps. Look, it was not easy raising money locally. I mean, we raised it locally. We did not get a lot of favors. I know a bunch of our seed investors will tell me that I'm wrong. And I'm not talking about the little guys, but I don't think we really got a fair valuation. I don't think we really, a lot of the things I learned from that, now that I'm a pretty active angel investor, I'm in close to 50 deals myself. Actually, everything I've taken out of ACV on a secondary, I've fully angel invested or donated. I've kept none of it. I literally have the same car I had before we started the company. So it's got a new exhaust on it, but that's it. I took a lot of those virtues. I learned a lot from it. And I was like, this is a really great learning experience. And it'll shape who I'm going to be as an investor, a mentor, executive, father, for the rest of my life. So it was funny. We never really hit a do or die point. It was tough. It was tough getting everybody to play along. Startups are tricky. Co-founders are great because it means you not do it by yourself. They're also tough because they're partners and you're in bed with somebody permanently. It ended up leading me to ultimately leave the company the second time by my own choice, which was really nice. In the second half of 2018, my son's birthday is August 20th, and I want to be out of there by then to be able to say, hey, look, the years, I don't want to be working so much that I miss another year of this, the most important thing in my life. So it's tough. When I think about founding another company, I'm getting ready to come out as a partner with this company, Azuna, which is entirely different. It's a consumer products company in Buffalo. Actually sells things and things that look like this. It's basically like a whipped and gel binded tea tree oil, but it's fun, right? At this point, I realized you got to do something that you love that's fun.
You got to enjoy the journey. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, congrats again on that experience. How do you think about the fact that, obviously the cliche, right, that all these unicorns, billion-dollar companies need to be in New York or San Francisco or Silicon Valley. I think that's obviously changing. You guys are one of the first to kind of showcase that. Yep. Looking back on that journey, what do you think about that going forward? What do you think that means for the next decade of, the 2020s?
Honestly, founding a unicorn is not all it's cracked up to be. It's still great. Don't get me wrong. But I think that we're chasing this dream of building as big a company as possible at any means, right? For any means, Right. I hope the ACV ends up going public because it means it will maintain position ownership in Buffalo. But look, it's important, right? Unicorns are what put you on the map. It's what gives you hope. Right, it's what gives you insight into things. And now it's funny, all these Midwestern, I think of Buffalo as a Midwestern city, are starting to get their first couple of unicorns. Pittsburgh had theirs about a year ago. I forget what it was, but these tech unicorns. So it's nice. It means that we're keeping up with the Joneses, right? I actually think that it's in vogue to try and find the first unicorn or a unicorn in these upstate cities. I'm a pretty large investor of a really good friend of mine's company out in Syracuse called TCG Player. And I go, dude, what do you want? He's like, I want the thing to be a unicorn. I go, all right, cowboy up, man. And we'll see if that ends up happening. I'm really hoping it gets to for him and for the city because, it's shaped my investment thesis, which is like, at this point, you don't know what's going to win and what's going to lose. You don't. I mean, I'm not so well connected that I'm getting arbitrage plays. What I am saying is, like, if I get the chance to, with that little bit of capital I have, to seed a founder who they, again, get a spin at the roulette wheel to hopefully hit. And if they do, they're going to do the right things with it. That's one of my biggest investment theses, is like to only put money into people who are going to do good with it, which means I miss out on good deals intentionally. But, life's only so long, and you don't bring the money with you. So.
Well, while we're talking about these kind of, second and third tier cities, I mean, what do you think's happening right now with COVID and this great migration we're seeing around the country? Do you think that's going to accelerate these cities? That's sort of my take on it. But what are your thoughts?
So I think a couple things are happening, right? People are boomeranging back. Kevin, you're in Buffalo and you moved back since COVID, so you're an example of that. There's the Zoom towns, as they call them, right? Like, you can't buy a place in Tahoe, or I spent a lot of time in a camp up in the Adirondacks. Like, the property value is like doubled up there, right? Yeah. So there's these Zoom towns where people are like, I just want to get reconnected. I think it's awesome. I think it's great. It's not just the anarchist in me saying that, but like, I think it's really wonderful that you no longer have to make the decision, I'm doing this for my career or I'm doing this for my family, right? I mean, COVID has allowed you to be able to kind of do both of them together, which is really cool. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. So
yeah, I would definitely second that. That's not having to strike that balance, right? I mean, we moved to New York for opportunity, right? And 8 hours away from everyone. And so it's definitely I love how you kind of phrase that, the finding that balance. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I mean, and I think that just as, it's given us more time to, and look, I want to preface this by saying I have lost no loved ones to COVID. I haven't personally gotten it or suffered from it. So, I mean, like in those instances, like the tragedy it comes with a loss of life or like a hampering on life is horrible. But the macro, like the ripple long-standing effects of this, I think is going to be wonderful. I think people are going to stop making their work, their life in the wrong way, right? I mean, look, I'm a founder and an entrepreneur. I'm sitting next to another founder right now next to me, right? Like, like we work a lot and we live what we do, but we do it for us and we do it for our own causes. We don't do it for Morgan Stanley. We don't do it for, Goldman Sachs. We don't do it for, So it's really interesting. And I mean, as somebody that's in the smaller city that has lost a lot, I think it gives a lot of opportunity for one to get talent physically back here, maybe even if they're not working with the companies here. And look, so if it means that people that have more global connections, I'm going to sit next to a bar and bump into, and that's wonderful. I mean, it's going to create more collisions. And the problem is these little cities have been so siloed that now that the silos are gone and it's more of a digital world, the physical presence of people are the collisions that really can help us grow.
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit there about being able to find not having to choose between career and personal life so much. How do you personally think about work-life balance as having been a founder and so involved in startups?
I think founders don't think about it or mental health as much as they possibly should. Thanks, man. It or mental health as much as they possibly could and should. I mean, work-life balance is, like, I'll give you an example. At ACV, I never want to do that again. I mean, I was tracking my hours, and there were easily weeks that I was cracking 100 hours. I mean, to crack 100 hours means you don't really get to sleep, right? It wasn't every week. It was when we were doing fundraising. And, I mean, those were definitely the highlights, the high watermarks. But, I mean, I can tell you personally now, I actually, I still work with executive coach, which is another thing every single founder should get. I don't care how early you are, find one. But, I have two good ones that are now friends, so I kind of do coaching and kind of work with them. But I told them, I said, I took every one of my responsibilities and laid them out, and I put the time commitment I want to do on it, and I gave myself a balance of the amount of time that I actually want to spend, not with my family and not stuff like that. And so I basically built a table and I put all the chips on it, and I got to find a way to make them fit, and everything that doesn't fit, I take out. And it means I've dropped a ton of stuff, but I realized, like, I dropped a ton of stuff that I really didn't need to begin with. Right. Now, in work, it's a little bit tougher because for me, this is the things that fell off is I can't mentor as many people. I can't advise as many companies. I've got what I'm doing for my family. I've got my main focus. I realized focusing on one thing is really where you get an aggregative effect of the output. So I'm focusing on one main project. And then all the other things are kind of like the little, pieces of rice or grains of sand that kind of fit around those big things. And when the jar's full, and to not have any, remorse or regret about that. So I personally am trying to get to the point of really getting to a 40-hour week. I'm like a recovering addict. Like it's taking me a while to like wane off of it, but and I'm a single dad on top of this. So like the 1 day a week my son doesn't go to school, he's in pre-K, he's 5 years old. That's my day with him, and there's no touching that. And then the other 4, Monday through Friday, the other 4 days, that's not like that. I'm like, okay, what are my big things and what are my little things? And I'm using like a schedule to figure that out. I'm saying I'm actually booking time to like think. And I'm like, I'm not going to do anything but think in this area, right? Or read or learn. And when I was a founder, I never did that enough, man. I just didn't do it. And it kept me behind. I was operating. I wasn't getting any stronger. I wasn't getting any faster. I wasn't getting any smarter. I certainly wasn't getting any younger. It's a
little bit like the tortoise and the hare, right? And I think you see some of the best founders figure out a way to move a little slower, but they find a way to sort of optimize their life. I was talking to Dennis Mortensen from X.AI. Every Sunday he walks 50 blocks, uptown New York City, and then he takes the train back down. And no headphones, no nothing. No, he doesn't even take a photo of them. Just sits and processes his thoughts and clears his mind for the week. And then when he gets into a meeting on Thursday, he's got everything sorted. He knows exactly how to respond, how to say. And really finding that balance can actually get you to the destination faster because you don't necessarily burn out or scatter across the path there.
Dude, I mean, we've all got like a cachet of like, clutter in our brain that you've got to get through. And you got to be intentional. Like, honestly, the byproduct, look, in Buffalo, we're known for our short commutes, right? So like, but even just that 20 or 30 minute drive, that you would take every day, that's now gone. Like that was processing time for people, so that you have to be intentional about it now, right? Like you're sitting in your house and there's, Kevin, you got a little kid, you got kids or kid or kids everywhere, or if not, you got animals everywhere, or your personal life everywhere, or whatever. You got to be insistent to make sure you are creating, unadulterated, pure focus time for just you to just like get back to being you. Pull all the pieces of you that floated around, collect them, stick them all back in you, and then be the best you can be. Yeah,
it's hard because it really takes taking a step back to do that and that's scary to do in the moment because doing that in the moment means you're going to fall behind on all this work that you're used to just like charging ahead with. So it's tricky. It's almost a muscle that you need to build over time.
Yep. Absolutely.
So now that you're in this next phase, right, I want to ask you, what is your philosophy on, I don't want to say wealth, but let's say value, right? What is your philosophy on building and accumulating value in this world, right? Like this next phase of your life, how are you thinking about that?
Take away this consideration that I have that the United States position as being the only first world country that has never had a currency collapse may go away.
Bitcoin's up today, but PayPal said yesterday they're going to start letting people transact on it.
Oh, of course they are.
13,000 again. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Oh, of course. I just sold a bunch of it the other day. It's one of these wacky situations where I think people put too much precedent on the dollar, right? Like on the financial wealth that you build up. I mean, I can tell you, you operate best when you got a lot of friends and you can make a lot of connections. That's when you operate the best, And so I always try and think about the value of my network, right? I mean, you get to these points where having a lot of wealth, I think, and I've never been in the position where I've had that and held it, But all of a sudden you run up a bunch of points on the scoreboard early, but the game's not over. The game gets uninteresting. You start playing a prevent defense. People leave. Like literally, it's like the microcosm of what happens in like a football game as compared to like life when you ring that up. And all of a sudden you start getting sloppy, right? Like you're not putting your best, like you're not getting better, you're not getting sharper. It's funny, you bring up crypto, and like I got a couple buddies that made a lot of money because they bought crypto. That made them no smarter than they were before. Now it just gives them a lot of money, and they play these, and what they have spent their money on is building a castle to defend what's left. And it's like, that's your life. That's your life. Like, I'd rather be hungry, right? I mean, I actually haven't even eaten lunch before this conversation, so I literally am hungry. But, I don't know. I mean, look, I mean, if you are running a company to get rich and that's the only reason, quit fucking doing it. Absolutely, like, stop doing it. It's not worth it. Life's too short, and you don't take it with you. But if you're doing it because you absolutely enjoy what it is, and it doesn't mean that you have to love, like the product doesn't make you up. It's like what's around it, you know? So like, do you get to make people's lives better? Do you get to make people happy? Do you get to heal people? Do you get to help make sure the world's in a cleaner, better place? Like whatever it is, you better love it. And, you know, my mom always said, she said, do what you love and then find a way to make money at it. You know, I can tell you one of the reasons I left ACV, I did not love helping used car dealers secure inventory faster. Like that's not what they were writing on my epitaph. And I also didn't love working at a place that was, because of its success, was becoming corporate. And I was like, that ain't for me. I ain't a suit, you know. First time somebody asked me to cut my hair, I'm leaving. So nobody asked me to do that, but you know, you get the drift of where I am. So, I mean, my vision on the whole...
That's such a good point. You know, we used to start Founder Institute with, you know, this passion session, and some founders would get annoyed that we would even talk about it, right? I used to tell them, it's like, you know, you can get annoyed that like we're not like immediately jumping into fundraising talks or product talks, but like this is the gas in the tank. And when this gas runs out because you just don't care anymore about this business, that's when it dies. And so you could pick something that you want to work on, right? And we can have this talk now, and we could probably extend your success rate by 5 years. Or you could just like go do something that you think you got a hook with, but like you're going to burn out in a year and give up on it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, super true. Well, Jack, we're gonna round it out here and take it over to the back channel. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast and share your lessons. Where can people go find and check out more about you?
Well, they can go to LinkedIn. I mean, that's pretty much the only social media I'm on. I'll give you the link to the Buffalo Bridge. I write this, me and a couple other people, not just me. I write the wacky intro to this kind of weekly newsletter about everything, you know, startup-related items, Buffalo-related items, life-related items. So happy for anybody to hop on that. And please give me your comments on it, right? It's a little bit of therapy that I openly share with about 10,000 of my friends on a weekly basis. And besides that, I mean, come visit Buffalo. You know, I mean, it's I get with all this quarantine stuff, it's and COVID, it's a little tough, but it's a really good place. So if you're within driving distance, even if it's from the city, everybody knows somebody from here. I can tell you that much. And it's a good place to be, especially this time of year in the autumn. It's beautiful. So yeah,
for sure. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. The show notes, which include everything from this episode, including links to what we talked about, will be up on the website. Jack, we're going to take this over to the back channel for those members, where Jack is going to share the best piece of advice he's ever learned. Stay curious, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode of Ambition Today.
Thanks for listening to Ambition Today. Be sure to visit Syscar.co to get all the information from this episode and more great content. Until next time, stay curious, everyone.